Yuzu? All right, just so you two know, since you're here, um, the I am live right now, so see if anyone got a couple more minutes, so we'll see if anyone hops on Zoom or it's available on YouTube and people can watch it afterwards.
Yeah. Do you have the paper copies, Jaren?
Jamie does.
I'm gonna go grab them for him.
And then
Kathy, you got one? I've got one. You don't remember this, Kathy?
It's okay. I learned Maureen has surgery coming up.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Well, why don't I just in case then too, you know? Might as well.
I just,
Much rather be careful.
she, we've been moving since August, so
Yes.
unfortunately, the teacher she works with back home.
testing. Okay.
It's just like, oh, yeah, no, it's pretty good.
Will, welcome. Hopefully you can hear me. Oh, it says you can't hear me yet. Connecting to audio. Okay, says you connected to audio. You hear me okay? Oh, well, you might be able to hear me. I can't hear. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah.
Nope, nothing yet.
Yeah, I just muted.
Should be down. There you go.
Nope.
Oh, no, still can't hear you. So it's on your system. So you're unmuted on Zoom. So
It's probably the headphones thing.
it could be the headphone thing, or I'm not sure. Or if you have any questions, you could just type them in the chat. If you.
So how about now? You got anything?
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
Gotcha.
okay. And I can hear you, so I'll leave the headphones off then.
Okay.
If there's any disturbing noises in the background, please let me know. I have a sick boy here who's on the cartoons and other household things.
No worries. And just so you know, this is being recorded. It's streaming currently, so.
Okay.
And we have Kathy and Mizu in the room here with me, so I've got 12:03, so we're gonna just get started. If anyone has questions as I'm going through this, feel free to just stop me and I'll try to answer your questions. This is mainly just orientation, just about why and how we do the budget. We'll throw in a
Okay.
little more information. So Oh, let's see. Let me share my screen here. All right, Will, you see this Budgeting 101 screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, Budgeting 101. So, basic budgeting. The process, components, and details of the budget. We won't get into much on finances, but just details about some of the things about it and the role of the budget committee. Definition of a budget. Budget's financial plan containing estimates of resources and requirements for a single fiscal year. Why budget? It's required by law. So Oregon requires us to budget. Without an adopted budget, district would not have the authority to spend money. And being the business manager of the district, I've had a few people in the past ask me or mention, oh, why does a district need a business manager? Or, oh, they're kind of surprised about this position, wonder why. And this is a fairly small school, but it's still a $5 million operation on a yearly basis. And so that's why there's a business manager and why there's a budget. I mean, school is business. Students are our consumers along with the general public and stuff. And so we try to please them, but like any business, you sure can't please everybody. But that's why there's a budget, because there's plenty of money involved.
It makes sense to me.
So, 5 steps to the budgeting process. First, we prepare the budget. The budget committee will approve it. The board then will adopt it. Then I go about executing, the school goes about executing the budget. I review how it went, and then I prepare it the next year. So just a continual cycle. As we work each year, we have to do it. So how's the budget developed? There's resources. We figure out the amounts, sources, where's that money coming from that we have available? Is it a one-time source? Do we get, a single pot of money for one time, or is it continual, coming in over a number of years, or just continuing like the state school fund? The impact on the future, those one-time budgets, if we end up hiring somebody for those, what are we going to do with that person when that money runs out? Requirements, looking at staffing and supply allocations per building. How many people do we need? What programs do we need? And balance, for every dollar in requirements, there's got to be a dollar in resources. And when we say balanced, that doesn't mean that we only spend what we bring in. We also have additional starting balance, but we have to have, and so we have to have those resources to be able to spend. We can't go into debt. We can't go in the hole. So our expenditures have a account code. This structure, participants 3. Let me see. Looks like somebody joining. Yeah.
Up there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Give Nancy, looks like Nancy joining. Give her a second. See if everything's working there. All right, Nancy, it says that you're in. I see you. It says you're muted. So if you have any questions, can you hear me? Okay, so you want to test unmuting if you have any questions?
Okay, I'll let you know.
Okay, so we can hear you. So All right, we're just going over why we budget. I mentioned that it's, a school is like a business. We have money coming in, and we got to spend it on people, and so that's why we have to budget. Right now, we're talking about the expenditures, just the account codes related to it. So, now let me flip through back to where we're at. So the state sets up, they have the PBAM, that is the, what's it stand for? Budget account, I don't know what it stands for. It's basically the state sets up certain codes that you use. We report this information to the state, and in order to make it kind of uniform, somewhat uniform across all the districts in the state, then they set up these certain codes. And so as a district, we have a bit of leeway on some of the use, but there's a general uniformity to it. So this 100, 1122, 378, 230, 100 is the account code for an expenditure. When we spend money, we have to assign it to a certain category. And so to break this down, the fund is 100, which is the general fund. I'll talk about funds. I'll talk about each of these things, break most of them out into a little more detail. But the fund is the general fund in this case. The function is 1122, that's middle school extracurricular. The cost center is 378, that's middle school. And then the area is 230, that's athletics. And then the subject is 100, volleyball. And then there's an additional object code, which is another 3 digits. In this case, let's say 130, which is additional salary. And so each thing that gets spent is coded to an account like this so that we know where the money's being spent, and then I report that information to the state so they can see how we're spending our money, and our auditors look at it. And so that's when we get into the budget next week, that's what you'll see is a bunch of codes like this, and they're grouped into categories for each thing. So really this number doesn't matter too much to you typically. Matters to me. Our fund, there's specific purpose, and each of those funds is self-balancing. The resources have to equal the requirements. Like I said, overall the whole budget is balanced, but each fund has to be balanced also. So the different funds, there's Fund 100, which is general fund, so that is our operating money. The money from the state, our local funds from the county, that's all of that money. And then we have Special Revenue Fund, which is the 200s. That's mostly our grants or specialized things that we set aside money for. And then there's Fund 300, which is Debt Service Fund. That's to pay for our bonds, is the only thing in there now. There used to be a, well, no, I didn't even, yeah, that's to pay for our bond that we did a few years ago. And then there's 400, which is Capital Projects Fund, which we don't use anymore. That was related to the bond also, having all that money separated out. And so those are the different funds that we have. Functions. Function describes the purpose for which a service or material object is acquired. So we have the thousands, which is instruction, 2000s, which is support services, 3000s are community services, 4000s are facilities and construction, 5000s are debt service, 6000s are contingency, 7,000s are unappropriated ending fund balance. So once again, the numbers don't mean too much to most people. This is just how it's broken out. So, and that unappropriated ending fund balance, like I said, if we don't spend everything that we have, then it's going to carry over to the next year. We can use it in that year, and so that's the unappropriated ending fund balance. Cost centers, you have each school may be separated out by departments, but mainly our main cost centers are the district, something that's figured for the whole district, and then you have the elementary and kind of the middle school. I've mostly split it out into just secondary, but there's some things still categorized as middle school. So high school, middle school, elementary school. There's also transportation might be split out as a different section also, or department. Just a way to track information for the state. Object codes, that additional 3-digit number, are split out also. You have salaries in the 100s, employee benefits in the 200s, purchased services in the 300s, supplies and materials in the 400s, capital outlay 500s, dues and fees, other activities 600s, transfers in the 700s. That's if we transfer money from the general fund. The main thing that we use that for is when we transfer money from the general fund over to one of those special revenue funds. We have a couple special items in there that we have money set aside for. Textbooks, the extra PERS or retirement, things that we do, capital improvements. Those are the main three that we tend to transfer money for. And then contingency is another one, and the UEFB, that's unappropriated ending fund balance. So those are the various breakouts of the objects. Developing the budget, so 2 years in the biennium. The state runs on a biennium. The state figures a budget for 2 years, and then they take that money that they allocate for the 2 years and they split it up, 49% of it the first year and 51% of it the second year. For the 22-23 school year, we're going to be in the second year of the biennium. And just well, let's look at this next slide. I'll just show it this way. The general fund resources, the primary one, the main thing that makes up our funding is the state school fund. So the state allocates a certain amount of money, that's that 4951, and the components of the state school fund are interactive. The main component of it is attendance, how many students we have in the district. That's ADM, average daily membership, and they calculate that a couple times throughout the year. They have a couple snapshots and they say, okay, this is how many students you have, this is how much money you get. Another component of our general fund is property taxes, so the county collects taxes and they send them to us. The common school fund, federal forest fees, county school fund, transportation grant, those three, common school fund, federal forest fees, county school fund, along with federal forest fees, is state managed timber. Those items don't tend to make up much of our budget in usual times. Transportation grant can be a bit of money. The state calculates a certain amount and they cover our transportation costs, a certain amount of it. And then other resources is our beginning fund balance, money that we've carried over from previous years. and miscellaneous local sources and transfers in from other funds. Usually don't have transfers into the general fund from other funds, but miscellaneous local sources, rent, interest on investments, selling surplus property, various things like that. So just take a look at the state school fund. Bring it, oh, that is where we have it. So I mentioned it's based on ADM, our average daily membership. So this is, so the state puts this information out. Next year, I put in an estimate of how many students we'll have. So I'm estimating next year we have 135 students. It shows how many we have this year, 131.59. Once again, that's, you know, based on attendance, and so you end up with decimals of students. And then they also have additional weights. And so if we have, so IEP students, that's individualized education plan. So our special education students, they give additional money for. Additional students above certain amounts, students in poverty. And so remote elementary, small high school, post-grad scholars. But so each of those additional things, they give a little more money for us in addition to our number of students, and that becomes ADMW, average daily membership weighted. And so we have, they consider us to have 277 students then for our attendance. And then we take that number, how many they give us, and this is the state school fund estimate. So it was based on about a 9.3 billion budget for the biennium. And then it shows here the weight between the 2 years, 49% and 51%. And so we have 4.7 billion for this year, and so they start off with that. And then these are what are called carve-outs. They start saying we're going to chip away at that total, and we're going to save money for reserve, save money for speech pathology, organ virtual school, long-term care, ELL, English language learners, educator advancement fund, small high school grants. So they have all these little things that they chip money away from. And then it gives how much then is left from the state revenue. Then they bring in the district's local revenue, that's the county taxes, and they figure how much all across the state is going to get. ESDs, our local ESD, how much they'll get. And then they start splitting it out to the districts, how much the districts get, how much the ESDs get. Once again, some additional carve-outs. And then you get down to the final, how much money they're giving out total to the districts. And then if I look for our district, then it breaks it out, breaks out how much we anticipate getting from the county, common school fund, county school fund, bases it on, takes a look at our teacher experience and the state's average and adjusts it based on that. And then it comes up with a total amount that we get, and our total formula, 2.7 million for total formula, before we figure in other things. So, and then calculates, subtract the local revenue, and then we get how much we get from the state school fund. So just a bit of information on how that's all calculated. The Mapleton property tax rate. So that's the money that we get from Lane County, that local tax. Since 1997-98, all school districts have had a permanent tax rate. county assessors take our permanent operating tax rates with other levy rates to determine the consolidated tax rates. These rates are applied to the assessed value of each property to determine the tax imposed for the property. So an option for school districts is to have a supplemental levy if they want to have more money, and that's added on to the property taxes. Mapleton doesn't have one. Our permanent tax rate is $4.89.17 per $1,000 of assessed value, and that's what we run with. That runs our property taxes that we get from the county and some of that goes towards the bond payment. But so that's the tax rate that we're assigned, and that's how much we assess. Changes to the budget. So we have the proposed budget that I'll be presenting next week. If there's additions in one area, they require reductions in another area. I mean, we have a certain amount of money, and so if we want to take money from if we want to have money to use sports as an example. Right now, we don't have a swim team. If we wanted to suddenly add on a swim team, and we wanted to budget for that, then we'd need to take money from something else to be able to pay for that, unless we found some new source of revenue to be able to pay for that, and we added that into the budget. But so basically, we look at the budget lists, how much money we have coming in, and then we list is all that money going out. The adopted budget. So once I propose the budget committee approves that budget, and then the board adopts the budget. So once it's adopted by the board, there's 3 opportunities for modifications to the budget. You have emergency educational expenditures. They have to be below a certain percentage of the overall budget. If there's some emergency, and the state has a definition of what those types of emergencies are, then we can spend money that's not set in the budget for that. Appropriation transfers, if we had money in the contingency, then we could set to be able to move that money from contingency into a certain category. And then there's supplemental budgets. If there's some unexpected thing that's not qualified under that emergency provision, and we want to plan for that or set money to be able to use for that, then we can run a supplemental budget that the board approves, and that's just something that the board has to do in the event that we run into that. So the budget committee's responsibility. Your responsibility is to approve the budget by approving the property tax rate for the general operating fund. And that's, I mean, we have that permanent rate, and that's just what we use. And to approve the dollar amount for debt service for the payment of bond principal and interest. Once again, we have a certain amount that we have to pay towards the bond, and so that needs approved. And that's the basics of the budget. You have any questions on any of that? And so next week we'll start right into the nuts and bolts, the dollars of it, and we'll go through and look at it. I think I emailed that out this morning. So you should have it available in your email. If you want a paper copy, there's paper copies available here at the high school office. They can be picked up anytime before next week, or we'll have paper copies available at the meeting next week, so you can look through it. One thing that I try to do on the budget is if I bring the budget up just to show an example. Oh, actually, I'll bring up the except there it is. So just to show the budget, the first part is a narrative. It's information. It has information broken out by those show the state school fund, and it has information broken out by those functions and by those objects, just to show overall what is spent for that classification. But just to show you what the budget looks like, it'll show our 20. So when we look at these numbers, 2020 is the 1920 school year. So this is we're going into the 2023 fiscal year. So we're looking at this 2023 prop, that's 2023 proposed. And so these are the amounts we're looking at. And then we have last year's budget, the actual amount spent for the previous year and the year before that. So that's the information that'll be listed in the budget. And then I try to put if there's something that kind of changed, if the numbers had a bit of a shift in them, I'll list on there why there was that shift, just so you guys, so that the budget committee has early warning, or knows what that change is related to. There's not a whole lot of changes for this year, but so you can look through those, and when you see those notes, it's kind of one of the amounts that I felt like had a bit of a shift to it, and so I wanted to provide an explanation, so people would know ahead of time. But so that's what you'll see in the budget, so you can look down through, and like I said, split out into different categories. So all the elementary expenditures, secondary ed, extracurricular, and then you've got athletics and the different athletic categories. So it's broken out by category, so you can see how much is being spent, and each category is totaled up. So you can go through that document and take a look at it in preparation for next Wednesday. And this is the main page that we'll start at next Wednesday. I don't tend to go through the narrative. You can look through all of that information, and if you have questions on it next Wednesday, then you can bring it up. Otherwise, we'll just start right in, start on this page on the general fund revenues, so, and go through that information. So, are there any questions here online?
I don't think page 30 and 31.
It's in our script on here.
Oh, it restarts at page 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, the narrative goes to page
Okay.
30.
So this is where we'll start.
Yes, this PDF of it looks a little different because of how I print them up, but when we look at them, it'll be the same, yeah. Because this is combined versus when I print them, I print out two separate documents, and so, but yeah.
Matthew, please turn that down a little bit.
So that's the presentation. And so if there's no questions, then that's all I have for you. Not too long. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for that brief synopsis.
Yep. So I'm going to close all that down. I'm going to end our Zoom, and then I'm going to end our stream. So thank you, Will and Nancy, for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing it for us. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we'll see you Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
There's some, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
On these, where they're